Amanda DeCadanet, welcome to the American Glutton Podcast.
Ethan, this is such a treat. It really is.
We were going to
To
try
be
to do, yeah. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
just to be interviewed by you is just wow,
Well, I mean,
amazing.
I feel like it must be weird. You are an interviewer, like that's what you do. So is it going to be weird to get interviewed? No, you've
Yeah,
been interviewed before.
of course I have. But I'll tell you, like you probably know this when you interview somebody who's a friend,
Yeah.
it's an interesting thing to do because you know stuff that you're asking them questions that you know the answer to.
Yeah, I know. Listen, I will say that not that this necessarily would come up with us, but there's certain times where I'm like, because it's my friend, I'm way less inquisitive simply because I'm not 100% sure everything that person's going to want to talk about. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. Oh, I
Yeah.
know exactly what you mean. And there's things that you just don't want to ask because you know that they don't really want to go there, but you would have someone who you didn't know.
Right. Because I would feel like if it was
Yeah,
somebody I didn't know, it would be like, well, that's what we're talking about. That's the thing.
exactly. Exactly. So
Meanwhile, you and I could talk about anything.
we can. What are we going to talk about? Because there's so much we could talk about.
Well, more than 2 years ago, we were going to do this, and we got derailed by the entire world collapsing.
Yeah, we did. We
Um,
did.
well, so let's talk about diet. And listen, I'm a dude. I have a lot of female energy in my life because I have girls and a
I
wife
know
and
you do.
granddaughters and girls coming out of my ears. However, I don't really talk to them about this stuff. Occasionally I'll have a kid go like, how much protein should I eat a day? And I'm like, that's such an odd question from you, but okay, let's talk about it, and then I'll find out that one of my kids is really trying to deadlift with the guys. And I'm like, okay, yeah,
I
eat a bunch of protein.
love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
But I think the female perspective on diet, and I try to have as many female guests as possible, is completely different from the male perspective.
It is. It is. There's just so much of a different lens on the female body. And not to say that I don't have guy friends who also really struggle with their self image, but certainly as a public person, and you know this better than most, there is so much focus on the external. And, for me, I started working at age 15. I was hosting live late night television in the UK when I was 15 years old. And so there was a lot of focus on the way I looked. And it took me years to appreciate, to kind of care about my body from the inside out as opposed to the outside in.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of kind of education that needed to happen. And it came through because so much of the time it was like, well, what looks good? I need to make sure that I look a certain way. And that, over many years was quite destructive, you know learning what works for my body so that I can be strong and healthy and look the way I want to look has been a real process.
Yeah.
And when I had my first daughter at 19, and I put on a lot of weight from being pregnant with that first child, and there was a lot of public criticism of my body, and it was things like, she used to be so hot and now she's not. And it really was very damaging for me, and it took me many years to kind of develop a loving relationship with my body, because certainly at that time it was the cause of a lot of I was made fun of a lot because of how my body looked post pregnancy. And I was mad at my body. I was like, why won't you go back to normal like it was before? And I realized there is no normal. There's a new normal. And then when I had my twins at age 35, my body did the same thing again. This time I had a twin pregnancy. So it was almost more extreme. And then I was like, okay, I've been here before. I know that I can have a body that's healthy, but also looks the way that I want it to look. And, it has been an ongoing process. I got pre-diabetes during pregnancy that never left. And so I've been managing that. And that, for me has meant that I could look at a carbohydrate and put on weight.
Right.
And man, do I love to eat cookies and cake. Yeah, I love to eat cake. But you know what? I now eat cookies and cake that's made with almond flour and monk fruit sweetener.
Right.
And you know what? They're pretty damn good. Like, and this has been a journey. Like, this is kind of like the journey I don't talk about, that is kind of right behind insignificance. It's right behind recovery and getting sober at 21, which was, that is a journey, right? I've been sober most of my adult life, and that is an ongoing process. That's the most important thing. And then right behind that is my relationship with my body and, my health and my matching my insides with my outsides. And that has been an ongoing journey too. And I'm still in process with it,
How important do you think it is, this what you said, loving myself from the inside out? Because I find that's still like a very big work in progress for me. But I find when I go into something and I'm very down and negative on myself, I don't usually succeed, versus when I'm lifting myself up and talking and treating myself well and kind to myself, I have a little bit more power over whatever I'm doing. That process is so fascinating to me. And it's not, I don't think it's really, I like philosophy, and I like to look at things like emotions and go like, that's not really real. We're reacting somehow to something objective, and the objective thing, it takes no moral position in space and time. And I'm in charge of how I feel about it. And then I also feel a certain way, and that can cause me to react in certain ways, and sometimes I regret them and sometimes I don't. But like this idea of treating myself kindly and loving myself, not because of or how I've succeeded at a diet or not, but simply for who I am, I find that so important. And I want to know, what's your experience been like with that?
It's really difficult. I mean, it's really difficult. We all know that affirmative thinking is good for us in every way. It's good for us spiritually, it's good for us psychologically, it's good for us physically. And yet it's really hard to do when you have, emotions are strong, reactive patterns and imprints are strong, and it is really hard to not let those take over. It is one of the ongoing challenges and things that I have to work on is mindset. And I am always so curious when I meet people who are able to kind of, I don't want to say control their mindset, because I don't want to get in a fight with controlling my mindset. I don't even want to look at it that way, but they have mastered the art of positive thinking. That to me is fascinating, because I'm such an emotional being and my emotions can run me and really take over. And that is one of the things, I mean, I work on it every day, and boy, is it tiring. I literally said to someone this week, do you think there'll ever be a time where I don't have to spend 85% of my day trying to self-regulate what I'm feeling?
Right. Do you find though that with time and practice that it gets easier? Like it becomes like, I know what you're saying. Some huge portion of my time is spent in a similar way, but I do think the effort behind it has lessened up, because now not innate, but it's becoming more a part of my routine.
Yes, you've integrated it. I've integrated it. It's part of who I am. It's like, what kind of person do you want to be? Who do you want to be? What kind of parent do you want to be? What kind of partner do you want to be? Looking at all the areas of your life and going, it's definitely better for me and for everyone else when I do this. And
Yeah.
therefore, the same way that sobriety is built into and recovery is built into every day, it's just part of the fabric of who I am. And self-regulating and mindset is part of every day. I start my day off with, between 15 and 30 minutes, sometimes an hour if I can get it, of, the things that I do to put me into a mindset that is positive, and that for me is, I have a couple of books that I read. I do a meditation. I do some kind of movement of my body, whether that's walking or yoga or swimming. I read something that is inspiring, and then I get on with my day. And it just kind of shifts my brain into a sort of energetic space that I hope I will stay in as long as possible throughout the day.
Yeah. And then I think that that kind of practice allows us then to seek out and find the tools, because I think of every kind of diet or regimen as a tool. Any of these things are just a tool. I don't think any of them are the be all end all to like, my life is solved because I did this diet, but they're oftentimes sold to us that way, and sold to us as though like this X works for everyone and everyone should just do
Or
this.
this will fix you. This will
Right.
fix you. This is the answer.
Yeah.
And it is never one thing that is the answer. And what might be the answer for you is not the answer for me necessarily, and all of our bodies are different. We're all different. Our perspectives, our bodies, our, we have similarities because we're human beings, right? There's a kind of certain amount of similarities, but then there's also the nuance of individuality. And it's about, for me, it's been about really educating myself. Like at one point I did the ketogenic diet and I put on weight. I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And my nutritionist was like, well, that's just not possible. And I was like, it's possible because it's happening. I never went into ketosis. I just put on weight.
Yeah.
And now some people would say that's just not possible, but it was. And that was the facts. And I tried that. That did not work for me, So
I've put on weight. Listen, if you are consuming more energy than you're using, your body's going to store it as fat. So one way or another, it's certainly possible. If you did it, I've also put on weight doing keto. It's certainly possible.
Well, and yet I had to try things. And also, how do I feel while I'm doing something? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Each one of these things, like you said, they're tools, and they are not to be, you can't, if you look at it literally like a tool, you're not always going to just use a hand drill. You're going to need a hammer, you're going to need a saw, you're going to need different things at different times. And that's how I look at learning about myself, and understanding that my body is connected to my spirit, is connected to, all of it. Body, mind, spirit is connected. I cannot be learning and paying attention to one and not the other. Because I have pre-diabetes, how that manifests in me is if I eat sugar, I go to sleep. It's like my family jokes that some people shouldn't be, smoking weed and driving or drinking and driving. I should not be eating a cookie and driving. I'm like a drunk person, it's like, or a stone person. I'm like falling asleep and I can't process. I'm very slow to process. And I mean, that's real for me. It's like I will, if I can't sleep if I can't sleep, I will eat a cookie as opposed to, take something that make me go to sleep, because it does the same thing. So I had to learn that about my body, that if I'm going to eat anything that has any kind of raising my insulin, it must be at night before I go to bed. I can't do it in the day. Basic stuff like that takes you a while to work, kind of learn yourself, and go, oh, how does this affect me? Oh, when I eat like this, I feel like this, and so for me, it's been years of kind of learning myself. And also something that worked in my 20s or 30s or 40, might not work in my 40s.
Right.
It might not, as women's bodies evolve and change over time, and your hormones change, and your consciousness changes, and you learn more, and it's like you have to then adapt to what those needs are. And for example, right now, I am feeling very strongly about I can't eat animals.
Okay.
I went from eating like lamb chops because I really like them and filet mignon, and I just can't eat animals because during COVID I spent so much time with my animals, and I started to feel like, what's the difference between my dog and that cow? If I think my dog is, I'm connected to my dog and I have this profound intimate relationship with my dog, which I do, why would I not have it? Why can I not have that with a cow or a sheep or a goat? And it's just, I just have to listen to my body because right now it's just saying, don't eat them.
Right.
Now, I don't know what I'm going to do for protein because I need protein. My body needs it. My brain needs it. But I'm having a conflict because my spirit is saying, don't eat the animals.
Listen, I understand the moral issue with animals, but do you draw the line at stuff like whey? Like, is whey fair game for you, or you want to be ultra vegan?
I don't want to participate in anything that is harmful to animals right now. And I
Right.
also have chickens. And the thing is like, I know each one of those chickens, they've each got characters. It started with the chickens, Ethan, where I was like, I can't eat the chickens because I've got
But
chickens
listen, you ostensibly got them to eat them or to eat their
to eat
eggs.
their eggs,
Right.
right? Yes. And then I became friends with them because I was taking care of them. And then I was like, oh, no, and they're all so different. Their characters are so different. Like one's a total bitch, one is super friendly, and I was like, now I have a relationship with the chickens. I can't eat the friends.
Yeah.
So it's a moral dilemma because I know my body needs high protein. It just
Yeah.
does. That's the kind of body I have. That's the kind of brain I have. And so
You can certainly get a lot of protein from plants, and there are even protein supplements like pea protein powder where you can
well,
get.
that's high lectin though.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, the amino acid breakdown is not, maybe not as bioavailable as animal protein, so it's a quandary you're in.
It's a quandary, and I didn't choose it. It just came upon me where I started noticing that I was leaving the animal protein on the side of my plate at my
Yeah.
meals, and I was like, oh god, what is going on here? Maybe I need to disguise it more.
Yeah.
And so but I feel like I am pretty educated about food and also how I eat it, right? Like was it humanely killed, or does it come from a factory farm?
Yeah.
There's something like that makes a difference too. So there's a lot of considerations when eating, a lot.
Sure. I've had this idea many times. Usually it's with my kids telling me something's gross and we're traveling or something like that. And I'm like, this is no more gross than anything you're totally used to eating. I had to explain to a kid recently, and this kid is 15 now, by the way, so not really like a little kid, the kind of stuff that went into a chicken nugget. She assumed that it was just a chicken breast that was battered and then deep fried. And, I'd say, like, no, this is probably cartilage and beaks and feet and all that stuff is what's going into a chicken nugget, I would assume, and made into some slurry and then shaped and battered and fried. Uh, to me, it's not gross. To me, it doesn't bum me out. Like, this could
It
be.
bums me out.
I understand. No, I understand. I'm saying, like,
It's like what goes into a sausage.
right. Yeah. You could go to the sausage factory. It's going to make me hungry. You would never eat a sausage again.
No, I would never eat sausage again. And when you think about it, it's like the balls and the hooves and just like the bits that nobody wants.
Yeah. Yeah.
But again, educating them is like, then they can have a choice, right?
Right.
Like my son is, my twins are 15 and my daughter is a plant-based kid, from her own, from choosing that. And my son is a fucking carnivore, man.
Yeah.
He is like, I'm like, dude, when's the last time you saw a vegetable?
Not
You know what I'm
interested.
saying?
Yeah.
No, he's like, I mean, he'll have like a wedge salad with blue cheese dressing and like ribs,
Yeah.
but he's like super carnivore. And I have to let them be what they want, what they have to eat, what they want to eat.
Yeah, I took my youngest. It's very hard to find. You can't find like an abattoir or anything like that in Los Angeles where you're actually seeing the whole animal get broken down. But there was, and I doubt that it still exists because it's such a small community in Los Angeles that hunts. But in La Crescenta, there was a butcher that processed game meat. So if you shot a deer, you take it to this butcher and they break it
Wow.
down for you. So I took the kids in to see,
Wow.
look, there's Bambi. And I just want you to know that this is where meat comes from. Like, I want you to understand that it was a living thing, that was cute and cuddly and furry. And I think Grace was vegetarian for like 5 minutes after that, although she didn't equate that to bacon. So when bacon came around and she was like,
Oh,
but I
yeah.
want bacon, and
Bacon's the exception to the rule.
right. And that kind of derailed her veganism.
Why is that? That still happens to me. I smelled bacon the other day. I was like, yep, those, I don't care. Those little cute pigs, bacon smells good.
Babe is delicious.
Babe is delicious.
So how are you navigating this? How are you getting protein?
I mean, I'm having tofu. I am having pea protein. I am having some whey protein. Um, I am eating some like feta cheese, some cheese, but it's really difficult. I'm not eating enough protein, is the truth. Some fish, shrimp, I haven't. And then the other day, I heard someone talking about how there's this new study that like lobsters have feelings. I was like, I'm turning that radio off now.
Yeah.
Like I cannot be hearing that the fish now have feelings. Um, that's a Nirvana song actually about fish having feelings. But I was
Amanda,
like,
have you ever heard a lobster be boiled alive? Like they boil them alive
yes,
and
it's
they
horrendous.
scream. Yeah,
No, but
it's
that's the
really
air coming
awful.
out of their claws, Ethan.
Is it?
I'm choosing to believe that.
Okay. I think that's little lobster screaming, we have feelings and this hurts.
That's what I am afraid that you're right. And they started to talk about this on the show, and that's when I turned it off. I was
Yeah.
like, I cannot. So I have that's kind of like one of my last sources of protein is shrimp and fish. But then you have to have low mercury fish.
Oh,
And
I just had an idea. There's a great argument for mollusks being vegan friendly. And the idea is they're more like a fruit than they are an animal. They actually don't have nervous systems. So scallops and mussels and clams and oysters and things like that, they do not behave at all in the same way that animals do.
okay, that's reassuring.
Yeah.
It is reassuring because I thought, oh my God, don't let me start a relationship with a lobster or shrimp at this
Right.
point. Like,
Fuck you up.
just no, I cannot. I cannot. So, look, I'm listening to my body and it's telling me this is what you need to do right now. And, I will say my carb intake has increased. Hummus, a lot of hummus,
There's good
a lot
protein
of
in
hummus.
beans. Yeah.
Yes. So, hummus and then yeah, I mean, I don't want to eat too many beans
Yeah.
and the lectins. So my husband, Nick, he did the Gundry diet a long time ago because he had severe eczema and it completely got rid of it. And so he does not touch lectins.
Right.
And so I'm very aware of where the lectins live in foods. And so I also try to,
Peel
be
your
mindful.
cucumbers and get rid of the seeds. Yeah, for me, I'm a fan of that because I have a friend who had eczema also that cleared up when he excised lectins from his diet. I just go like selling that diet, the Gundry method or whatever the hell it's called, as a weight loss thing. To me, it doesn't make any sense because he doesn't really get into portions, and if he does, it really does come down to like a one size fits all. Like everybody just eat this.
Right. And I did do macros for a while and that was really interesting for me. That was super interesting. It gave me a kind of hypervigilance on food that ended up being not healthy for me,
Right.
right? Because I was so preoccupied with how much and all the different macros that were involved in everything. And it made me, it, it, it was helpful for a while and it really did work with weight loss,
Yeah.
but the mental piece of it was not, the psychological piece of it was not great because I was hyper focused on it. And now I'm in a place where I know enough about nutrients, macros, what my body needs, calories, portions, types of calories, that I know how to eat in a way that works for my body. It's like a language that I really can speak now.
Yeah.
And I choose to, speak that language, or if I choose to go off that, I know what's going to happen.
Right. And how are you with the externals? Like the internal matters more. That's the upper echelon of your goal.
Yeah.
How are you with the externals? Are you happy? Are you struggling?
Well, I'll tell you, this is the thing about me is I hate exercise.
Right.
I hate it. I was a trained gymnast up until age 11. And so I had to train, you know, 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. And on Saturdays, it was 5 hours a day. And so that gave my body a muscle memory, and it gave it a structure and a muscle tone that has been with me my whole life. But I hate exercising. And I don't think I have endorphins, by the way. I just don't think I do. No, you're laughing. I don't think I do.
Even when you were doing gymnastics as a kid, you never felt good?
No, I never felt good. I always felt exhausted.
Wow.
And I feel exhausted when I work out. I just feel like, oh my God, it's like I never feel good. And I really don't like it. I just don't like it. I don't want to do it. I don't like it. And so I'm looking at my body and I'm going, wow, your body has maintained so much without you doing very much aesthetically. Um, Aesthetically, it's in a point where I'm like, oh, gravity has now come along because I'm at a certain age where it's like, my stomach or my butt or my arms doesn't have the same tone. And it's up to me if I want to do something about it. I've been able to kind of skate by my whole life with still looking pretty good without doing much exercise, but that has changed. And
Right.
so now it's up to me. Now I have to put the work in if I want to maintain what I've got.
Yeah.
And during COVID, I was so sedentary that when I kind of came up for air, I was like, oh, a bunch has changed. Like 2 years of my life went by and I didn't really move. And so it has been, the last year and a half has been about getting my pre-diabetes numbers down. What that means is that, the more weight I get off, the less my numbers are. There's a correlation. So I've had to work really hard with my diet. I would say diet is kind of probably 80% of what I had to do. And then make a conscious choice. If I want my body to look stronger and more toned, I'm going to have to do that exercise. And so what is that going to look like?
Yeah. Yeah. I, it's tricky because from my standpoint, and I have a kid, one of my kids who I'll drag to the gym with me, and she'll come and then she's always tired at the end. And I'm at the end, I'm like, don't you feel great? And she's like, no, I don't feel good. I don't like doing this. And I'm like, okay, well, you don't
I
have
am
to come.
her. I am
Yeah.
her.
I don't know what to do for her because my experience has always been I feel better. That's the thing that keeps me going back to the gym. So like hearing
Mm,
that, I don't know how to solve that, but like if you I would say even walking is exercise, and if you can
I
find
walk.
somewhere beautiful to walk, that could be enjoyable.
I mean, look, Ethan, sometimes I'd see you at the gym and I'd be like, maybe I'll go work out with Ethan. maybe that would be fun if I could like do it with you and like you're so good at it and I'm so bad at it. And so it would be funny and like we would have a good time and we would laugh, and that's probably true.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I'm strong. Like I'm crazy strong. Like I can lift things that grown men are like, whoa, like I ride motorbikes my whole life and big motorbikes. Like I'm strong, physically, like I can lift things, I can move things. I'm good with strength. I'm not good with cardio.
Right.
I don't want to do cardio, but
Yeah.
I'm strong. So I can lift like serious weight for someone who hates exercise. So sometimes I have a fantasy of like, maybe I'll go work out with Ethan, you know, and then I think,
Anytime.
thank you. I know if I send you a text and say, Ethan, I want to come work out with you, you'd be like, let's do it. So for me, it's like, and I get bored. I get bored as well. It's like, oh, I got to do like 20 of these and then take a break for 30 seconds and 20 of those. It's like, it's so boring to me.
Yeah.
So I've tried to think about what can I do that is keeps my attention and that's like I have a friend that's rock climbing right now and she's getting ripped. But she loves rock climbing.
Yeah.
Like her arms and like even just like her weight, everything's going the way she needs it to, but she's found it through doing something that she loves. And maybe I just haven't found that. So I don't like group activity. And when everyone goes to the left, I've tried to do like workout classes or dance classes. I don't know what it is. It's some neurological thing, but everyone goes to the left. I go to the right.
Right.
I don't know. They say, put your left hand, do this. I'm the opposite.
You're like
It's like, it's,
slapping people in the face.
I'm just, it's terrible. It's terrible. So that doesn't work for me. I'm trying to, and by the way, I want to do things that I don't want to say feel good, but like I enjoy doing,
Yeah.
you
I,
know?
I just don't believe people will stick to something they don't enjoy, or it will just become so painful that it's like you're going to go and waste a huge portion of your life doing something that you really don't enjoy. I think it's a waste of time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is. And it's addressing one aspect of you. And, I started off saying this and I think about this, that if something isn't in support of all aspects of you, the mind, body, spirit, you're going to create an imbalance in your life. And so physically, is it doing what I need it to do? Is it elevating my heart? Is it creating, is it strengthening my bones? Is it doing what I need to do physically? If the answer is yes, great. What is it doing for my spirit? Is it stressing me out and taxing me so much? And I dread it every single time that it's putting me, that's raising my cortisol levels. So that is not working.
Yeah.
Like I always try to look for at this stage of the game, things that holistically fit.
Yeah. I think that's
And
smart. That's what you have to do.
it is for any kind of sustainability,
Yeah.
like what you're saying.
Yeah. I have a question and I want to pose it simply because it hasn't permeated my experience. And I sometimes wonder why, and I don't know why, but like when I was a kid and a huge a huge portion of my career was built on being overweight. Like that was
Sure,
why
that
I
was
was
part of
hired.
your identity. Yeah.
100%. And there were a lot of jokes in certain things that were directed at the character I was playing for that reason. And that was all fine. It was kind of totally acceptable to make fun of a fat person. Um, but like when you were 19, had your first kid, gained weight, and were kind of ridiculed in the press for it, I don't believe that could happen. I don't believe that would happen today. Might happen a little bit. Certainly people on the internet are assholes and maybe, but I don't know that big press outlets would be doing that. And I think that as
The British tabloid media,
are they rough? But
they still talk about women's bodies. I mean, publications like the Daily Mail, they can't mention a woman's name without describing her body.
right.
Slender legs
No,
or
I'm
whatever.
yeah, no, 100%. Women are still highly scrutinized publicly
Yeah.
for their bodies, but there has been a big urge towards more acceptance of larger
Yes.
bodies.
Yes.
For me, I look around and I go like, I see the society trying on this front. I don't feel it personally at all, and I'm not saying that it's because of the outside. The outside is changing. I don't. I it doesn't. I've experienced nothing. I'm still just as hard on myself as I was, when I was 500 pounds. Maybe not. Maybe that's not true, but I still have those thoughts arise and I go, well, I don't think the people at the beach are having this thought about me. Why am I having this thought about me?
Mm,
Have you noticed any shift for yourself, like society's
yes.
changing? And do you feel a change?
Yes, I do. I do feel, I'm a photographer. I photograph a lot of models. I've been photographed my entire adult life. And so I'm very aware of the cultural beauty norms. That has expanded. There are models who I know that I've worked with, that I know personally, who would be considered, fat girls. They just would. They were called fat their whole lives.
Right. Like
And
when we were teenagers, they had no
yeah,
shot at modeling.
oh no, definitely not. And I look at two of them I'm thinking of in particular, Paloma Elsesser and Ashley Graham, both of whom are exquisitely beautiful, whose bodies would never have been accepted in mainstream culture. And I love to see when Paloma was put on the cover of American Vogue, it was such a statement. It was such a statement for accepting, expanding the cultural beauty norm. And given that the average size of the average American woman is size 16, that's the average, which is what I mean. I don't want Paloma sizing is now necessarily, but you know, we need
I don't know what sizes. I've never
we
bought, but
need to
what's
be
the model?
representing. We need to represent the world.
Right.
So there is more acceptance, I think. And by the way, we're talking about normal bodies. We're not talking about an idealized standard of women's bodies that is a very small percentage of women. My husband will say to me, like, is that body real or not? And I'm like, well, you can see her waist is tiny, her ass is much larger, and her boobs are much larger. Like it's a rarity that women are born with that kind of a shape. Now maybe to some degree, because I had that shape, you know, that was my shape I had for years, like super curvy. But I know what it takes to buy that kind of shape, because I see women all over the place and they have small, tiny bones, tiny little waist, and then they've got giant boobs and giant bums. And it's like, well, that is bought. That's a bought bum and boobs right there. And I don't have a judgment of it. I'm just saying that the cultural norm has expanded to much curvier women, to the point where now you've got women who used to be in the ideal beauty standard, which is very slim, now buying boobs and bums so that they fit into the cultural norm. So yes, it has changed quite a lot, I think.
Right. I mean, that's all. I had never even considered that. But like as we were talking, I was like, when did this happen? Because Marilyn Monroe was not slight, right? She was a curvy
No,
girl.
super curvy. But it goes through phases. When you look at like fashion, like the 50s woman looked a certain way, 60s, 70s woman. I love the 70s woman. I mean, like you look at 70s Playboys, beautiful, full boobs, curvy, big bushes. You start to get into the 2000s, there's no bushes.
Right.
It's like the bodies have changed. The 90s were super thin, wave looking girls, with like super flat chested almost, and like straight down without the shape. It's like fashion and body norms have changed and evolved over time. And whilst I think that we're in a time that is much more expansive and inclusive of beauty, there is, of course, still now the cultural norm that giant boobs and giant butts are considered desirable. So you have a lot of people who are now buying those.
Right.
There's always an up and a downside of all of it, right?
Yeah, I just go out into the world and go
Imagine
like,
being a woman, Ethan. It's very confusing.
I cannot imagine being a
Yeah.
woman. No, no, it's I'm very very happy to not have been a woman. I love women, and I just want to go like, I I I wish I could truly empathize, but I can't. And whatever I can do for you, that's what I'll do. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, I just mostly I'm hands off. Um,
Well, you're smart. That's because you're married a long time and you got a lot of daughters. So you
yeah,
are smart. I love
yeah.
you, whatever I can do for you, but I'm hands off.
Right. Um, okay. You have for a long time been very, very a part of women's voices, interviewing women, propping women up, and you are moving into the arena of men. What brought that on?
Well, as you said, I have with my interview series, The Conversation, I have interviewed women for the last, 15 years, and I've photographed women for the majority of my career. And I've always been telling stories about women. Why I shifted to interviewing men is, I have a 15-year-old son. I'm married to my husband for 20 years. I have one of my best friends is a guy. I have a lot of, I love men, as you love women. I love men. And I also have been looking at the culture that my son is growing up in, and I'm very aware that men have had a massive cultural awakening over the last few years. And I've been having fascinating conversations with men about masculinity and what does it mean to be a guy today. And there's a lot of unanswered questions. And there's also, I think, a need for genders to be able to communicate about subject matters that we just haven't been brave enough to speak about. Genders need to have their own spaces because uniquely, as you said, uniquely, you as a man can understand the experience as a woman, and vice versa. I can empathize with you, but I really don't know because I'm a woman and
Yeah.
I'm a cis white woman, and that's my experience in the world. So I can empathize all I want, but the most I can do is to invite and create a space where multiple genders can communicate about subject matter and issues that I think we need to discuss together. And I'm really curious about how do we redefine masculinity? Because masculinity is being redefined. It has been redefined by sheer nature of what has happened with the women's movement over the last just 5 years. And so we don't have definitive shape of what does it mean to be a man today. A lot of male friends that I have are like, I don't even know anymore. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of confusion. And I'm speaking to men, everybody from, Matthew McConaughey about how he was taught about consent, what he says, how he teaches his kids about consent, to Charlemagne the God about mental health. And, as a Black man in America, what does it mean? What does masculinity mean? Um, I'm interviewing Mike Tyson next week. I'm interviewing really interesting men who have a perspective about what it means to be a guy and masculinity. And how do I help invite and help? How do I help invite a conversation around masculinity? Because I think that in order to really move forward, we need to have a space where men can be a part of this conversation.
I'm so excited to see some of these because I think a lot of the there's a lot of hesitancy, and I know that won't be the case with you because I know you very well, and I think you're very open and you're not judgmental. But I think you'll have men who won't communicate because they are scared, because
Yes.
like saying, some idea they have, which is amenable to other things. It's not fixed and rigid, but it's an idea can get them in trouble in the world now. You know what I mean? And it's like, how do we like really how do we evolve our ideas if we can't share them, if we can't
We
talk
actually
about them?
cannot learn. We cannot learn if we don't make mistakes. Making mistakes is an inherent part of learning, of growth. By making mistakes, you go, oh damn, that did not end well.
Yeah.
That did not feel good. I am not doing that again. Like, we have to be able to fuck up. We have to be able to make mistakes. And yet we cannot do it in a public forum anymore because that could be the end of your career. or
Right.
your marriage or whatever it is. And that speaks to the larger issue of cancel culture, which affects all genders. However, there is a specific culture that is ruthless with men. And I do not want to be a part of that culture. I want to be a part of a culture that is solution based and that is reaching across the aisle and trying to build bridges. And that's why I'm doing this series.
I think it's a very important undertaking that you're embarking upon because, you know, listen, people some people do things where I go like, I don't know, maybe that person needs to be excused from society for a minute. I
Yeah,
don't know,
totally. Yeah.
but then there are many instances where I go like, I don't know, maybe that person could really learn from this and grow and should be welcomed back, and they're not a lot of the time, or if they are, it's like on very different terms, and I think that by forcing those other terms, like people are just going to go exist over here and they're going to do just fine. Like their career's changed dramatically, but not ended. That's just going to reinforce whatever there's going to be no learning or growth in that way. It's going to be, well, I have to be right. I'm going to go into my corner and I'm going to just be right for the rest of my life. You know what I mean?
The only way that we can see if people have really learned is by having them back in culture and in society. There are some people where it's like, you're never coming back. Like, we can just send you to the island, wherever that is, and like, you're done, right? There
Or
are those
or
people.
fake your suicide in a jail in New York with many
Whatever
people
you want,
watching.
totally, whatever you want to
Right.
do, right? Whatever works for you. But like, we're never having you back in mainstream society. And then there's the other people where it's like, actually, this is pretty nuanced. And let's unpack this and let's look at this. And I have one friend who has been accused of assault by multiple women. And, over the years, I've had an ongoing dialogue with him about, well, how is it that all these women have this experience and you have a different experience? And I've been really grateful to be able to unpack this with him in such detail to really understand why he had that perspective he had and why they had the perspective they had. And what's been amazing for me is to see his ownership of what he did do and see his growth and see how his mindset is so different today because of what he learned.
Yeah.
And that to me has been really encouraging. There is something called restorative justice, which is incredible if it's possible. It's not always possible for many reasons. Sometimes the offense is so heinous that it would be re-traumatizing to the person to even have to sit close to that person again. But there are some cases. Ashley Judd talked about restorative justice, where she sat with the man who sexually assaulted her, who raped her. I mean, what profound healing is possible if we could put some kind of structure and tools in place to help people to heal. Taking ownership of the things we've done in our past is step number one. Like, true ownership internally. We don't need to tell anybody else that we've taken ownership, but for us, that is the first thing that needs to happen. There's nothing without that, you know. But there's also, what I'm finding so interesting in talking to men is, you know, some of them, the same way that different bodies were in fashion at different times, different behavior was in fashion at different times. And a lot of the people I've spoken to were like, that's just how we did it. You didn't have to ask somebody, may I kiss you?
Right.
You just leant in and tried to kiss them. And if they wanted to, they did. And if they didn't, they didn't. But now that's non-consensual kissing. And that could be a problem. So, okay, well, in theory, that's true. In theory, what you're saying, when you say it like that, like it's true, could be a problem. However, the game plan has now changed. And so for my son's generation, he has to be aware, and my daughter has to be aware too. There's a whole different dialogue. This is the way things are now. It did not used to be like that.
Yeah.
It is now.
Yeah, in that sense, I am so glad to have girls because first of all, I was never good with getting a girl to kiss me. This was like not my strong point at all. So I don't have anything really in that regard to teach a young man. But I can teach my daughters emphatic no, and vital targets on a man to attack if they need to. Like, and this is what I'm going like, all day long, we're going to learn eye gouges and groin stomps. And you know what I mean? And like, I
Ethan,
enjoy
you should
teaching them
teach a class on this.
this. Yeah.
You should. You're such a girl dad. I mean, and it's terrible that we need to teach our kids this. It's terrible that when I put my daughter, if I consider sending my daughter in an Uber, I'm like, you must wear pants. And, she's like, oh, that's going to make a difference. I was like, hey, just stop 50% of people looking at you if there's no less skin.
Right.
She's like, why should I have to adjust the way I dress because men can't control themselves? Because until they can, you gotta go with what is.
Yeah. But also, there's been no point in history where there haven't been scumbags. No point. No matter what society said was okay, no matter what culturally is acceptable and unacceptable, there are going to be some real dirtbags out there. So my point to my daughters is just like, I don't care if a person's supposed to ask you today whether they're allowed to kiss you or not. Fine. If that's the rule, fine. I hope to never be in a situation for the rest of my life where I have to like go through even thinking about that. Right. I'm married. That's done.
Sure.
My wife doesn't want to kiss me. She pushes my face away and we're fine. But
right. That's your love language.
Yeah, exactly. For my girls, like, I don't care if guys are supposed to ask you now. There's going to be a guy who possibly, hopefully not, but there could be a guy. I know a guy exists who isn't going to ask, who isn't going to ask about anything. And fuck that guy, kick him in the balls, gouge his eyes out, fish hook his cheek, scream no, scream fire. You know what I mean? Like,
totally.
That's kind of my position.
Ethan, I'm going to tell you that when my kids were little, I used to do fire drills with them about what to do if somebody touched them inappropriately. Both my kids, my boy and my girl. I was like, this is what you do. And I would actually have them say it out loud, no, don't touch me. And like, I would have them verbalize it so that they were used to saying those words. It wasn't alien language for them. And then you run away and you tell an adult, like we had a whole, like Nick with my husband was like, I think you're just putting the fear of God in them. And I was like, I mean, I had to really check myself on that one, like, am I putting fear into them or am I preparing them? Should anything, God forbid, happen?
There's the other side to this too, where I read a headline and I didn't read the article. I should have, and it's very lazy of me, but I read a New York Post, and granted it's the New York Post, so they're sensationalizing anything they write, but it said that a law was passed in New York that in nightclubs, it's now illegal to stare at a person without permission.
I saw that headline too.
I'm just like, come on, guys, this is ridiculous.
There's too much.
Yeah, it's a bridge too far.
Guess what? Some people will sue.
Right.
Here's the sad part. The Me Too movement is one of the most profound and needed movements of the last century. It really is. And there are people who will abuse every single movement for their own personal gain. Yeah. As you said, there will always be scumbags. There will always be people who use incredible, culturally significant movements for their own needs.
Yeah.
That happens. And we have to learn and be discerning between who those people are and who are the people who are really using something as it should be used.
Yeah. Yeah. This law in New York, I mean,
that law of looking at someone in a nightclub. I mean, what the fuck are you doing in a nightclub?
Right. Aren't you there to see people?
I mean, I am sorry, but look, you're a married person. I'm a married person. If my husband's in a nightclub at 2 a.m., my question is, what are you doing?
Right.
Like, sorry, single people are not really going to nightclubs unless they're looking to get laid. Or, married people, you're there to look at people and get drunk or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. It it made me really chuckle because and I guess I need to tell my kids like eye gouging and groin stomps for a person looking at you might be an overreaction, you
You
know?
must remember to tell them that, Ethan.
Yeah.
You
Hopefully there
must.
won't be any nightclubs in New York anytime soon, but
I
yeah.
mean, we hope not, but I don't know. If they were like us, maybe they will.
Right. Yeah, they probably already have been if they were like us.
Right.
Amanda, thank you so much.
Ethan, I'm so happy to talk to you.
You too. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye.